Good morning, Year 4. How are you? Welcome to your English lesson for today. We're going to be continuing with something similar that we did yesterday. So yesterday we know that we were looking at the features of a diary entry, really starting to analyse and annotate those features in a diary entry. Now today we're going to do the same, but this time we're going to really focus on how we can give specific examples of where we'd use these features so that we can possibly use them in our writing when we're writing diary entries next week. So to be successful in this lesson, you will have to do three things. So first of all, you will have to be able to explain the features of a diary entry, being able to give examples of these features. You will have to read a diary entry and identify where the different features have been used. And you will start to consider how you're going to include those features in your writing for when you begin to write your own diary entry. And that's when that you're given your examples, that's going to help you to think, when can I use these features in my writing? I have a retrieval question for you here. So I want you to look at this image and think, what does this image tell me about what the word undulating means? Now this is one of our words that we learned as part of our vocabulary learning in our reading sessions, and I wonder if you can remember what the word undulating means. Pause the video here and have a think. How did you get on? Can you notice what's happening to the road? It looks like it's happening it's got a bit of ripple effect. So it's going up and down and up and down. And that's exactly what the word undulating means. It means where something has a smoothly rising and falling form. Another retrieval question here based on yesterday's learning. Now, can you remember the features of a diary? Thinking of all the things that we've learned so far, that we've really spent lots and lots of time working lesson by lesson to try and perfect these features of a diary and use them correctly. Now, I would like you to write a list on your piece of paper. You need to include the sentence, a diary must include, colon, and then start to make a list of all the things that you remember from yesterday's lesson that a diary must include. So pause the video here and make a list, please. Okay, did you remember all the features? Fantastic. So a diary writing must include the date or the time, remembering where the date goes, normally in the top right hand corner, or it can be featured in the first few lines of the diary. It must also be written in first person, thinking of those first person pronouns. It must also be written in the past tense. Why? That's right, because you're talking about something that's already happened. It's already happened in the past. You also need an introduction to set the scene. So you wouldn't just write, Dear Diary, and then start talking about something random. You'd set the scene first. You'd say where you were, what you were doing, how you were feeling. Personal emotions and feelings. So really starting to say like, I feel this way, I think, I am. Also thinking about getting that ambitious vocabulary in there. So what we worked on a few lessons ago, really making sure that our writing is really pushed up to the sky and using those fantastic adjectives. I saw some fantastic sentences for your ambitious vocabulary lesson. I know that Ibrahim, you wrote some fantastic sentences. Natalia and Layla wrote some fantastic sentences. So well done. And also use time conjunctions and adverbials of time. So after that, before lunch, until sunset. Now today we are going to look at these features in more detail. Now we know these features really well, but if I told you, give me an example of what we could do, what we could write to show that we are writing in first person, would you be able to write that down as a sentence? And that would tell me that it's written in first person. Well, that's what we're going to learn about today. So we're going to start thinking of some examples of these features. So first of all, we're going to take the fact that a diary needs to be written in first person. And to do that, we know that we need to use first person pronouns such as I, my, our, we. I've put our twice, I didn't need to put that twice. Now, can you think of a sentence that's written in first person? Now, I bet you can. You might have said, I am walking to the shop, or I ate some beans on toast earlier, for example. But does that relate to you being in a rainforest? No. So when we're thinking of our examples today, we need to think, how can I link this to the rainforest? Because year 4, all of these things and all of these ways that you're practicing these features, you can use these. You can steal your own ideas and use them in your diary writing. How fantastic is that? Now, I want you to pause the video here and think of a sentence using some of these first person pronouns to show me that you can write in first person about the rainforest. Pause the video here and write something down, please. Okay, how did you do? Shall I show you my sentence? I chose to use the first person pronouns we and I. And I said that we decided we wanted to make a fire. I gathered some wood. Now, if you were stuck before and you hadn't wrote anything down, now is your chance to pause the video again and write another sentence in first person. Got another example for you here, using the pronouns our and we. Our throats were so dry, we hadn't had a drink in 48 hours. And if you notice here as well, I've also tried to use some of my past tense verbs, gathered, decided, were. I've also written an informal way by using the contraction hadn't for had not. So although my focus here is writing in first person, I've also took other features such as that informal writing and those past tense verbs. Fantastic. So now we're going to try and use past tense. So we're going to try and write a sentence about the rainforest in the past tense. Now I've included some past tense verbs here. Ate, walked, slept, knew, drank, talked. And I'm thinking, how could I construct a past tense sentence about the rainforest? What actions might I be doing in the rainforest? Well, I might be sleeping, I might be drinking, I might be moaning, I might be talking. So I could use all of these verbs to write a sentence, and that's exactly what I did. I chose to write the sentence, I walked miles until I found some more grubs. And look, I've also used my time conjunction until here as well. And I've written in first person. So again, I'm using 3 of our features in one sentence. I walked miles. There, my past tense verb, walked. Until I found, another past tense verb, found some more grubs. Can you pause the video and have a go at writing your own sentence using past tense verbs? How did you do? Shall I show you another example? Now, I'm thinking, what other past tense verbs can I use? There's loads. Anything I want to say, I can make it past tense if I just think how that would look if I previously did it. So, my next past tense sentence is, we wanted to try and use the raft again, but we were too scared. So again, that's linked to my rainforest. We wanted being my past tense verb. We were too scared. So they're my verbs highlighted there to show me that this text is written in past tense. Another feature that we tend to use are personal feelings and ambitious vocabulary. So we might express our own personal feelings in our diary by starting our sentence with I thought, I felt, I was. Now I've had a go at doing this myself and I've thought, how might I feel in the Amazon rainforest? What might I be thinking? Now, I might be thinking that I'm quite lonely. I might be thinking, will I ever get out of here? Will I ever reunite with my family again? So I've tried to think of a sentence that really evokes my own feelings. And I came up with the fact that I felt terrified. So I've used that sentence starter. I felt. But not only I felt terrified, I was beginning to think I would never see my family again. So I've expanded that with 2 different clauses that came together. So that makes it a bit more of an interesting sentence for my reader to read. Can you think of a sentence where you might use personal feelings or ambitious vocabulary? Here my focus was personal feelings, but can you think of a sentence that might use ambitious vocabulary too? Pause the video and have a think. How did you do? Shall I show you another sentence? So, we used our sentence from the other day, but I used some different adjectives in a different way. I saw a majestic cascading waterfall in the distance. How beautiful does that sentence sound? A majestic cascading waterfall. What type of phrase is that here for? An expanded noun phrase. We know this because we've got our noun, the waterfall, our 2 adjectives separated by our comma, and our determiner, a majestic cascading waterfall. That is an example of my ambitious vocabulary, because using those really ambitious adjectives to create this expanded noun phrase is what we all need to keep trying to do. So when you're doing your independent learning today, I want you to think, how can I not only evoke my personal feelings, so show my personal feelings, but also use that ambitious vocabulary in there? And second to last feature now, using adverbials of time. So we've had lots and lots of practice on this, so you should be experts at this. We've got our box here full of the different adverbials of time. Now we want to think, how could we make a sentence? What could we be doing in the rainforest? Could we use the sentence or the adverbial of time suddenly, eventually? Eventually would be something we're doing at the end. So maybe I could use maybe after a while. Do you know any adverbials of time that I could use? Can you make a sentence? Pause the video and have a think. I had some fantastic sentences then. Well done. So I used the adverbial of time suddenly. I said suddenly I heard a bird chirping in the trees. Now, how could I have made this sentence better? Could I have added some ambitious vocabulary? And where could I have used it? Did you spot my noun, the birds? Did you spot my second noun, the trees? I could have used two adjectives to describe either the bird or the trees. I could have made an expanded noun phrase for both of these. So when you're writing your nouns, your things, always think, how can I make this better by adding some adjectives to really make my reader imagine that they are there too? Have a look. What form of punctuation have I used after my adverbial of time? Can you see? That's right, I've used a comma. We need to always make sure we're using commas after our adverbials of time. If you didn't quite think of one there, can you think of another sentence using an adverbial of time? You don't have to write it down, just say it to someone next to you or say it to yourself. Pause the video here and have a think. Okay, how did you do? Did you think of another adverbial of time and another sentence? Your sentences don't have to match each other. They could be about completely different things. My sentence uses the adverbial of time at first. I felt nervous, worrying that the raft wouldn't float. Can you see some more features I've included in this sentence? That's right, I've used my personal emotions. I felt nervous. I've also used my contraction here. Wouldn't float rather than would not float. Fantastic. So you can also see here that I've also used my comma after my adverbial of time. Our final feature is that informal language. Now this one is quite hard to get right. Considering we need to use that ambitious vocabulary as well, I would probably say our easiest way to include informal language is using our contractions. So saying words such as it's rather than it is, or writing don't rather than do not. Now, I'm going to help you out and I'm going to construct a sentence using informal language. I'm going to think, well, what contractions are there? Won't, mightn't, don't, it's. Can you think of any more contractions? And I'm going to think, what might I say with those contractions? And I said I didn't want to eat the grubs anymore, I didn't want to eat the grubs, but it wasn't a choice anymore. I've used these two contractions, didn't and wasn't. But I've also used my own personal feelings. I didn't want to eat the grubs. That's my personal opinion, my thoughts. But it wasn't a choice anymore. Is that fact? It isn't a choice. There's nothing else for me to eat, so I had to eat them. Can you have a go now at creating your own sentence using that informal language? Try and get a contraction in there. Pause the video and have a think. How did you do? Did you find one? Fantastic. So, my next sentence was, it's truly horrible. The feeling of pure loneliness out here. So I've used a contraction, it's. Now, notice year 4 how all of my sentences that I've given for my examples today were not the same. They were all about different parts of the rainforest. Now, this is really important that you use a variety of different subjects when you're writing your examples of the different features today. This is because when it comes to your diary writing, it's going to be easier for you to write your diary when you've got lots of these fantastic ideas, because you can start to blow them up to make paragraphs based on each subject. And we've learned lots about paragraphs, haven't we?